All right, I'm going to mix a limited palette. This is what I use when I teach because it not only helps students understand color theory, but it also helps you in your mixing to realize that you don't always need a tubed color to give you exactly what you need. You can learn to make it yourself. So in this, I use Winsor Newton's blue, red shade Winsor blue. I use their alizarin crimson. You can use the permanent. It's a little dark for me, and these are beginning students, and it doesn't really matter. They say that alizarin has a tendency to fade over time, so it's up to you. And then Winsor yellow I really like their yellow. It doesn't have the cadmium in it, I don't believe, but it's got a really nice strength to it. And my Primalba white is my go-to white. I've understood that they've tested whites, all kinds of whites, from Gamblin to Windsor to some of the Williamsburg, and Primalba white seems to be the one that will hold its tone, its lightness, its light fast for 10 to 20 years. And oftentimes most of the other ones will fade to a yellow in 3. So these are my choices, and I start in a circular. I've got this reversed, so I'm going to try to do this upside down, but I don't even use the white yet. I'm going to move it out of the way, and I give myself enough paint. I start with yellow, and I add yellow for my yellow orange. I'm going to mix it with my red. My red will go here. Then I skip all of this. I give myself a little bit for green. I give myself for my earth tones, which normally I mix on this side. I'll mix them up here so you can see them. I'll start with my yellow to move through. I call them grays, but really they're earth tones like raw sienna. I'll mix them across here. A tiny bit, I mix my own black. So a tiny bit of yellow, and the size of your dollops or your blobs of color are important. You want enough paint on your palette to use. You don't want these tiny little dots of color that you're going to run out of instantly. So give yourself permission to use some paint. I've got my red for my red orange, orange yellow orange. I've got my pure red. I've got my red for my red violet and my violets. I need some for my blacks, and then I need some for my earth tones. So I'm going to do this. Okay. I also like using a palette knife for the reason in mixing that it gets me familiar, and I like them to use a palette knife because it gets them familiar with the feeling of using a palette knife. Palette knives are extremely helpful when you're painting. So now I've got my blue. I'm going to add a little bit of blue here. I'm not going to run it into my red yet. I've got a blue here, and I've got a tiny bit of blue for my green, and I promise you the Winsor blue is so strong. The only thing you really need it for is black. You want to make sure you have predominantly mostly blue, a very little bit of yellow just to break the color. It's the complementary color to blue violet, and that's really where you're going to go with this. Is you're going to get a blue violet and you're going to kill it with the yellow. Little bit of blue for your grays or your earth tones. I call them grays because I got in the habit of it, but in truth they're really earth tones. So the palette knife comes in handy for this reason. I'm going to grab a paper towel. Okay, so you can start anywhere, but if I go ahead and start with my black, I'm going to take some of this red and put it up here. Okay, so I've got predominantly blue, red. I'm going to mix this and then stir in my yellow. On most of them, you don't have to thoroughly pull the colors together. I kind of like the marbleization of some of the striations of a little yellow next to some red when I'm mixing my oranges. But the black, I like to kind of thoroughly mix. It is blue, but it will be like a black. It'll act like a black, but it won't give you a flat, dull value or a tone when you're finished. It won't sink into the canvas quite like ivory black does. Okay, so now I've got this little bit of blue on my knife from the black. I'm going to start here with my violet or my alizarin crimson, and I'm going to pull it into my yellow. Now I want to keep this yellow my lightest It's going to be more like a sienna. The little bit of blue helps it not be so yellow-orange. And then I bring it back through my red. And this is what I mean by striations. I don't like that completely mixed. I kind of like that. I like to be able to reach in here and pull something out if I wanted a pure color. So then I'll come back up to my blue. That little bit of blue I had, see how much it controls that color? So I'm going to pick up the blue down here, and this is going to be my cooler umbers, kind of a umbery mix. Now I don't want to pull much of this back in to these until I need it. So this is about as mixed as what I call my earth tones to be. Then what I have left on my brush, I can either, or my palette knife, I can either put back into my black, or I like to clean my palette knife off in the middle of the palette, and this is what I'll start painting with. Now I'll go to my yellow. I want just a little bit of red to mix with this whole pile of yellow, because I want a yellow orange. And alizarin is a very strong color. All these are really strong colors. That's why they're complementary and they go well together for color mixing. So I'm going to pull my yellow into my red and get more of a orange. And then I'm going to mix the rest of it into a red-orange. And notice how I keep this not completely mixed together. I don't like two perfectly piles of colors. I don't know, I'm just not like that. A lot of people do. They'll make little tiny circles of exactly the color that they want, and to me, that's well mixed. Take a little bit of blue, again, a little tiny bit of blue goes a long way. That's going to totally change the color of this little bit of, or this big huge blob of alizarin crimson. Now I'm going to, because I have predominantly, and the thing about color is, without it mixed with white, you really can't tell what colors are there. So know that in your mind, psychologically, and actually with knowledge, not even psychologically, I had a huge pile, bigger than that, and a teeny little drop of blue. So I know predominantly I have red-violet. That's the only way you're really going to be able to tell it apart from the violet. I'm going to take a little more blue, mix it with this. I'm going to consider this my violet. I'm going to take half of this, scoot it over, a little more blue, and I will have my blue-violet. Now see how you can really not tell what these colors are? So you just have to know that your mixtures are based on your information of how you put your color out. Okay, last but not least, the yellow. Again, teeny little amount of blue to this whole thing of yellow gives me, I even wiped most of it off, gives me a yellow green. Look how dark it got. So I'm going to set this over here, pick more of my yellow up, and now I have more of a yellow green, working my way towards green, and then picking up the last bit of it for a blue-green. I now have yellow, yellow-orange, orange, red, red-violet, violet, blue-violet. I have yellow, green, green, blue, and black, all out of those three colors. Again, I will take this extra bit of blue, mix it over in my black. I do like that. And the only way you can tell what your colors are is to mix them when you start using your white. And since I'm not going to do that, you can try that when you start mixing your own at home, or we'll do it in class. Again, my Primalba white is my go-to white, but now I have an entire full palette from 3 tubes of paint. I'll mix this up and use this to start my painting. It's usually a kind of an earthy, warm. It's great skin tones. These colors are beautiful, worked together well. And the thing about using and limiting your palette to just 3 colors like this and white is that you can mix any of these with white at any time, anywhere. I can grab my yellow green and mix it with my yellow orange. I can do anything I want to, and I will have beautiful color. I won't have horrible looking color. It just doesn't happen They all work together well. These are the three primary colors that make every color in the rainbow. So all of these colors combined can make unknown, what do you call it?
Range.
Yeah, range of color. And you're not limited to anything. It's just how well you learn to mix and get used to these colors. Anyway, I'll squeeze out my white. Again, this is my reverse palette. I would have my white down here in this corner, and I always put it out the same way, and I always know where I'm going and where I'm going to work. So I hope that helps.